What men do versus what the church teaches, there are two different things. Hello and welcome to Our Hearts Are Restless. My name is Alexis. Thank you so much for joining me. So in a recent episode, I talked about Martin Luther and his character, about who he was, how the idea or the doctrine of the enslaved will came about. And I received a few comments on that video, Protestants defending their faith, and rightly so. You're allowed to do that. But I find that a lot of the time when I, not just in this episode, but in previous episodes where I defended the Catholic faith and Catholic teaching, there is a lot of misunderstanding when it comes to the role of the Pope, priests and religious in general, and how much power, and I put that in quotes, power, they actually have over the church. I did make a mistake. At one point I said the church did allow indulgences, and what I meant by that, not the church herself, the institution, but I'm talking about the people who ran the church allowed it. But was that a good thing? Should they have done that? The answer, of course, is no. So in this episode, I wanted to tackle the infallibility of the Pope and the powers that priests and religious have over the church. The Pope is the servus servorum Dei, the servant of the servants of God. He is here to take care of us. He is the head of the church. He is the servant of the servants of God. He is here to represent God. He is not God. I remember a friend of mine who is a Protestant, and this was in the very early stages of my conversion. She asked me, "Isn't the Pope the king of the Catholics?" No, he is not the king of the Catholics. I've made a video about that. If you're interested, you can look at it here. I'll link it below. So he is not the king. He is not the king. He is the servant of the servants of God. It's not that he can just create things out of thin air and decide to change things just because he wants to. He does not have that power. Christ founded a church, and because he founded it, it is completely perfect. It can't have any errors. But the people who run the show, who run the church on earth to serve him, are sinners. The church, as we say, is full of sinners. That's what it is. And God tries to bring about good through us horrible people. Yes, there are many, many, many atrocities that have happened in the church. Even today, there's a lot of men and women who are in the church, priests, nuns, lay people, up to the highest, who have sinned. But that does not mean that the church herself is bad. So just in the same way as a doctor saying, keep smoking, it's not going to do you any harm, the medical institution isn't bad because this doctor is saying something that is not correct, something that is false. When there is, let's say, a scandal, or even in history when for example, indulgences were bought and paid for, that doesn't mean that the church itself, Christ's church institution, approved of it. My husband was saying this the other day. You can't judge somebody by their friends. I mean, look at Judas. Judas was friends with Jesus. Even Peter was friends with Jesus. And he was singled out. He was set apart to run his church. And yet, from the very beginning, he betrayed him. And he was in his presence. Does that mean that Jesus, are we to blame Jesus for Judas or even Peter's sins? No, because he's perfect. When Catholics talk about the church being infallible, or when the Pope is infallible, he is infallible under the guidance of the church. He can't say one day that, for example, that contraception is completely okay. That would contradict the Bible. That would contradict the church, the magisterium that Christ established on this earth. So that's what I mean. You have the servant, and the servant is still, the servant is not the king. He is the servant. He is to do and to say whatever the master says, and that is the Pope. He can't just all of a sudden make up stuff. The same with bishops, the same with priests and religious. They can't just make stuff up and say, you can buy your way to heaven, because it was never, ever believed that you could do that. We have to separate people's sins from the church. That's why at the end of that episode, I said there always has to be some sort of reform. And the reform is not to make it easier for us to live life on earth. It's to make it easier for us to be sanctified, to become holy. It's not to make it easier for us to sin and to do away with the guilt. That's the problem with the enslaved will. You remove the guilt, and you remove that the fact that it's wrong, and that it's just you don't have the choice. It's completely out of your control. It's either God or the devil controlling you, and that is such a cowardly way of living your life. The church is infallible. She cannot tell a lie, cannot say anything untrue, because Christ established her, just like God, through the Holy Ghost, inspired the writers to write the Bible, which is infallible. But the men who wrote the Bible were not infallible, were not excused from being able to sin. And that is the same with the Pope, the bishops, the priests, the religious, you and me. We are not perfect, and we are poor, and we need divine assistance. Divine assistance does not mean God chooses what you do or do not do. To obtain some divine assistance, we must ask for it. We have to be willing to ask, to be humble and ask God, please, I need your help. It's not God gets to choose what you can or cannot do, because then love wouldn't exist. And just briefly on priests and religious nuns, brothers, when they take those vows, when they go into the orders, it is because they are willing to take those vows. A lot of the times, people are actually sent away because either they're not ready. Today they're not full to the brim. We're actually at a low when it comes to numbers of priests and religious. But back in the day, they would send you away because they were either too full, and you would have to wait several years to be able to get into a certain order. So the comments where they say like these nuns were forced to be in the convent, they did not want to be in there, that is not 100% true. But like I said, what men do versus what the church teaches, there are two different things, and we can either confirm our will to the will of God, or we can make it through our own, right? We get to choose. Just as in marriage, in an earthly marriage between a man and a woman, when you become a nun or a priest, it is 100% your free will, your choice, whether or not to join. And if they accept you, you can say no. It is a marriage between you and God, and God does not want you to do that, to be in a marriage that you don't want to be in. So those are just a few things I wanted to clarify. I hope I was clear. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. If you have a better way of explaining papal infallibility, or if you have more information that you can lead other people to look at, please leave a comment below. Anyway, that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. God bless.